Hello guys, and welcome to one of my videos. Now, yes, Alien Tech Guru is technically the same thing as a legally stupid child, but I guess that's just my YouTube name. So that's why you saw Alien Tech Guru at the intro. But yeah, in today's video, I'll be talking about the whole history of Microsoft Windows, including some versions of Microsoft Windows that were never released, and some that only have like one build, like Windows Neptune. But yeah, I'll also be listing the code names and the release dates, and yeah, otherwise, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in today's video. I also forgot to say that this might be just part 1, and that there will also be photos of the versions of Windows that have photos available, because there are some versions of Windows that no build nor no any images or video footage have been released to us. So yeah, I'll also be using text-to-speech.
Windows 1.0 is the first major release of Microsoft Windows, which was released to manufacturing on November 20, 1985 in the United States, and later internationally in May 1986. It is a graphical shell that runs on top of MS-DOS and provides a cooperative multitasking environment that can run applications specifically targeting Windows itself as well as a subset of compatible MS-DOS applications. Aside from being available as a full user environment, it also exists in a runtime variant that developers could ship with their applications. Despite lukewarm contemporary reviews, it enjoyed moderate success and was eventually succeeded by Windows 2.0 in 1987. Windows 2.x is the second major version of Microsoft Windows, released in 1987 as a successor to Windows 1.0. It adds general support for overlapping windows, as opposed to the previous version which could only overlap dialog boxes while main windows were tiled. User experience with a keyboard was also improved by adding support for keyboard shortcuts. Built-in applications were updated to implement the Common User Access Specification, which among others introduced the Alt plus F4 keystroke to close a window. Many of these changes were done to align the Windows user interface with the upcoming Presentation Manager, which would ship with OS/2 1.1 a year later. Windows 3.0 is a major release of Microsoft Windows that was released on May 22, 1990 as the successor to Windows 2.x and was the first truly popular version of Windows. It was a major improvement over Windows 2.x, featuring a completely revamped user interface with the Program Manager and File Manager, replacing the MS-DOS executive in versions prior. Windows 3.1x is a series of Microsoft Windows versions following Windows 3.0 initially released on April 6, 1992. It added TrueType support and included multimedia components installed by default. System stability was greatly increased compared to Windows 3.0, while the user interface was refined and improved. It was succeeded by Windows 95 released in 1995. Windows 95, codenamed Chicago, is a consumer version of Microsoft Windows released by Microsoft in 1995. It is the first major release in the Windows 9X operating system line, and was designed to be the successor of Windows 3.1. It is the first consumer-oriented version of Windows to include Windows Explorer, a move which was followed by its NT equivalent Windows NT 4.0 in 1996. It would be replaced by Windows 98, and Microsoft ended support for Windows 95 on December 31, 2001. Nashville, initially codenamed Cleveland and also called Windows 96 in some files, such as setup.inf, was a cancelled project developed by Microsoft, which was an attempt to merge web content and the classic desktop. Windows 98, codenamed Memphis, is an operating system developed by Microsoft and is the second major release in the Windows 9X operating system line released in 1998. It was designed as an evolution of Windows 95 and introduced features such as the Windows Driver Model, Internet Explorer 4.0, which included Active Desktop, Windows Desktop Update, and integration with Windows Explorer itself, 1 FAT32 file system, though this was already part of the OEM-only Windows 95 OS R2 2 years earlier, and an improved setup process. It is the first version of Windows to include the Windows Desktop Update by default, an addition which carried over to the NT-based Windows 2000 in 1999. Windows ME or Windows Millennium Edition, codenamed Millennium or Georgia, is an operating system developed by Microsoft which was released on September 14, 2002. It is the third, and final major release of the Windows 9X operating system line, which succeeded Windows 98. Windows NT 3.1, codenamed Razel, is the first version of Windows NT. It had a very similar interface to Windows 3.1, but unlike Windows 3.1, Windows NT 3.1 was a complete 32-bit operating system while Windows 3.1 was mostly a constrictive 16-bit environment, although it also included 32-bit components to take advantage of the 386 processor. The name NT officially stands for New Technology, although it has also been explained to stand for N10, the code name for the Intel i860 processor that NT was originally designed for. It was succeeded by Windows NT 3.5 in 1994. Several update packages were released for NT 3.1 during its lifetime. Windows NT 3.5, codenamed Daytona, is the second major version of Windows NT, which was released on September 21, 1994. It is available in two editions, Workstation and Server, which succeed Windows NT 3.1 and Windows NT 3.1 Advanced Server, respectively. It supports systems with x86, DIS Alpha and MIPS processors, and a limited PowerPC edition was also released. Windows NT 3.51 is a major release of Windows NT released on May 30, 1995, succeeding Windows NT 3.5. Similarly to its predecessor, it is available in Workstation and Server editions. This version ensures compatibility with Windows 95, which would be released 3 months after Windows NT 3.51, and also introduces a proper PowerPC port. Other new features in this version include PCMCIA support, NTFS file compression, replaceable GINA, exclusive to the server SKU, 3D acceleration in OpenGL, Windows 95 styled common controls, as well as updated versions of Sound Recorder, Media Player, and Windows Help applications. Cairo was the codename of an unreleased software project by Microsoft, intended to bring next-generation technologies to Windows NT. The project was originally announced at the 1991 PDC, Professional Developers Conference, and later demoed at the 1993 PDC. Windows NT 4.0, codenamed Shell Update Release or Tukwila, A is a major version of Windows NT, which was released on August 24, 1996 as the successor to Windows NT 3.51 released a year before. It introduces the Windows 95 user interface to the Windows NT line and includes major architectural changes to the operating system such as moving a large part of the graphics subsystem to kernel mode and was the longest running version of Windows NT until Windows 2000's release 4 years later. Windows NT Server 4.0, Terminal Server Edition, codenamed Hydra, is an edition of Windows NT 4.0 released on June 16, 1998, one which allows remote solutions to applications on a server. Microsoft licensed the terminal server technologies from Citrix Systems, which already released a similar solution using Windows NT 3.51 Server under the name of Citrix WinFrame. As a result of this, Windows NT 4.0 Terminal Server Edition allows an upgrade from existing WinFrame installations, though this will cause WinStation connections to become disabled. The Terminal Server Edition was dropped with the release of Windows 2000 in favor of terminal services being integrated into mainline server releases. Windows NT Embedded 4.0, often shortened to NTE, codenamed Impala, 1 is a componentized version of Windows NT Workstation 4.0 intended for use in embedded units, which was available to original equipment manufacturers on August 9, 1999 too. Windows 2000, known as Windows NT 5.0 during development, is an NT-based version of Windows released by Microsoft that succeeded Windows NT 4.0. It reached general availability on February 17, 2000 after releasing to manufacturing 2 months prior on December 15, 1999. Windows 2000 was initially intended to be a counterpart to Windows 98, much as NT 4.0 was to Windows 95, but after delays, it was intended to replace both Windows 98, from which it integrated many multimedia-focused features, including full, proper DirectX support, and NT 4.0, but after further delays and slippage, it was aimed more squarely at the corporate market. Small Business Server 2000 is a software package featuring Windows 2000 Server and other Microsoft Server products. Odyssey was the codename for a cancelled business-oriented version of Microsoft Windows, scheduled for release in the fourth fiscal quarter of 2001, following Windows 2000. It was worked on alongside Windows Neptune, originally intended to be the first consumer-based Windows operating system based on the Windows NT codebase. Both Odyssey and Neptune were merged in early 2000 to create Whistler, later known as Windows XP. Neptune was the codename for a cancelled version of Microsoft Windows scheduled for release during the year 2000, which would have been the first consumer version of Windows based on the existing Windows NT codebase. The operating system was originally intended to succeed Windows 98, although this later shifted to Windows ME due to delays. Windows XP, codenamed Whistler, is an operating system developed by Microsoft. It was released to manufacturing on August 24, 2001 and later made generally available on October 25, 2001. It is the first consumer version based on the Windows NT codebase, succeeding both the NT-based Windows 2000 Professional and the 9X-based Windows ME. It was ultimately succeeded by Windows Vista in 2006 after several delays in its development, although some users opted to stay with Windows XP due to Vista's higher system requirements and initial system instability. Windows XP 64-bit Edition or Windows XP 64-bit Edition for Itanium systems is an edition of Windows XP designed for Itanium processors. 2 versions of this edition were released, one that uses the original Windows XP codebase and another that uses the Windows Server 2003 codebase. Both editions were discontinued in January 2005 after HP, the last distributor of Itanium workstations, ended sales for their Itanium-based workstations in September 2004. Windows XP Embedded, often shortened to XPE, codenamed Mantis, is a componentized version of Windows XP Professional intended for use in embedded units. It was released on November 28, 2001. Windows XP Media Center Edition, MCE, is a multimedia-oriented release of Windows XP, which was originally released on October 29, 2002. A spin-off of the Professional Edition, it is the first release of Windows to include Windows Media Center, a digital video recorder and media player application.
Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the text-to-speech voice and this video, and I will see you guys again in part 2 of this video. Anyways guys, goodbye.